Yes, Nina, thanks. Appreciate it. So when we talk about comps for the absorption rate, we need to know what's sold in a certain amount of time. We need to know what actives there are, right? And to do this, we need to actually nail it down where we have a specific area, and we want like kind properties, right? They need to be very similar to the subject property. So generally speaking, it's easier to start with a sold, just like you're going to do your CMA. And when you nail down, here's the 3 properties I want to use for my CMA. And remember, when we're doing a CMA, if we can nail it down to 3, the appraiser only uses 3 sold comps in their appraisal. So we want the best 3, just like they would want. So it takes some time to get there. But once you have that, then what you should the only thing you should really do is you click off of sold and click on active. Click off sold and click on active. And now you have the active for the same exactly the same criteria that you have on the sold. And now we're talking very specific about an absorption rate. Properties like yours are taking X amount of time to, 12 months to sell, for example. There's been 6 sold like yours, or there's been, as you're trying to nail that down. And when I say you want to select the 3 best, that's for the CMA aspect of it. But when we get down to it, how many are similar to theirs in that area, right? So let's just as an example, we've had 6 sold in the last 12 months that are similar to yours. And today we're going to talk about the 3 best out of that 6. There's been 6 sold in the last 12 months. That means we are selling a property like yours every 2 months. Every 2 months. It's going to take 2 months for a property like yours to be absorbed into the market. That's if we don't do anything else, right? I'm sorry, it'll take 2 months to get absorbed in the market. Then we take a look at the actives, and if there's 12 on the market, then we know that we have a good 6-month supply. If there's more than that on there, what's our supply, right? And that's where we have to convey that to them as to how long it's going to take to get that sold based on the actives that are out there, and what that means in reference to the price. Because all of us know that the higher the price, the smaller the market. They do a triangle on that, and we talk about it all day long. The higher point of that triangle, the higher price, the fewer buyers there are, right? So when you're looking at a right price analysis, the higher the price, longer the days on the market, generally speaking. Higher the price, longer days on the market, lower price, less days on the market. Where do you want to be in this price range? But we have to be able to explain the first part of it as far as how long it's going to take to get this sold based on that information to begin with. And so when we're looking at this, I'm going to do a couple things for you here real quick. There's a couple sheets that you can use for this. One of them, let me share this one with you. So this is a Excel spreadsheet, and I'm not real sure where this one came from. I believe it came from Norma, but I'm not positive. But it's set up so that you have your price. I'm sorry, you have your address, your information in here. And if you actually, so this is all, it's not locked. You can plug in whatever you need to, right? And remember, price per square foot is not something we use for CMA, but it is information sometimes to help the consumer understand what's going on. Down here where we have the months, enter how many number of closed in 12 months, 6 months. You can make it what you want it to be. There's no rule for that. During COVID, for example, how many are selling in 30 days in that area, right? You need to be realistic about it. And so when you change this number, this is set up as a template. How many solds have we had? Let's say we've had 8, for example. The average homes sold per month and the average months active on MLS. And it automatically does the math for you, right? It's set up so that you can use that. And down here, you can actually list the prices and go through everything with them, so that they can see where a good place would be to good place would be to work with that price wise. And that's what we call right price analysis, right? So they see where they want to be. That's what we want to focus on. And remember, adjusted price is really important. So let's just throw out some tips real quick on adjusted price. If the subject property is smaller in square footage than the comp, what do we do on the adjusted price? What kind of adjustment? Go ahead. Do that again?
Yeah,
You add what?
the adjustment.
Okay, but what kind of adjustment would it be if the subject property is smaller than the comp? We're gonna have an adjustment, but what type of an adjustment?
Dollar amount.
Right. Awesome. So what I'm trying to do here is, if the comp is better, CBS, if the comp is better, you subtract. So if the comp is larger, we actually subtract, right? If the comp has 4 bedrooms, the subject property has 3, we'd subtract. CBS, comp is better, you subtract. SBA, subject is better. So if the subject property is better, we have 4 bedrooms versus a comp with 3, then we add. And we do our adjustments that way. CBS and SBA. If you remember those, it'll help you with this if you're trying to do it manually. And I'm just trying to give you an idea of what this can look like as we do this. I'm going to share one other one with you here real quick. So this is labeled Gustavo's. When I first went over to the mission office, we were talking about absorption rate. He had shared this, and it's the same layout. Only thing is, in his, he has some arrows in here, adjustments. These, if you're doing adjustments, we don't adjust based on price per square feet. We need to know what that is for additional items. Remember that there's a part of this where, what if there's a shed in the back, or what we might call a shed in the back, but somebody's using it as an office, or they're using it as a rental property, which we can't really count, but we might want to look at does it bring any value? What if we have to walk across the driveway carport to get to another set of living quarters? Like, I've seen that set up where it's a carport, and on the other side there's a laundry room, maybe a maid's quarters, something of that nature. That's not the same value as the house would have, the main structure would have, but there's some there. There's ways of taking a look at that. So that's, you need to know what the price per square foot is to actually be able to work with that. Any questions there? So on doing this, when we talk about just the simple, this is probably close up. So you can see it better. So when we talk about the absorption rate itself, once again, how many homes have sold in the last whatever months, right? We need to know that. How many homes are being absorbed in the market monthly? That's just your simple math. How many homes are for sale in the market today? And then you have blank month supply. That's the big key there. You have so many months supply. And this is something I've shared in the past. This is one of those things where I didn't learn this until I had about 6 years in the business. I was taking the CRS classes, might have been, yeah, about 6 years in business. I was taking a CRS class, and when they went over this, I'm like, why doesn't somebody teach this? Why aren't we using this? But which is why I like to have it in our training the way I do, because it's so important, because it helps you nail things down, and it helps you show the seller this is where they need to be if they want to get their property sold. We love to ask their questions, right? If they're selling a house, why are they selling? How soon do they need it sold by? And oh, by the way, what do you think your property's worth in today's market? Are 3 really good questions for the seller. Absolutely 100%. I want to know that before I ever even start on this. That should be part of our first conversation. Why are you selling? How soon do you need it sold by? And oh, by the way, what do you think your property's worth in today's market? So when we're looking at this, we know where we need to be and what to expect as far as objections. You're in sales, and if you don't anticipate the objections from the seller in this case, you lose at the table. And there's been so many times where agents have talked about that. They weren't prepared for this, they weren't prepared for that. And our job is to do that. You do that by asking questions to help get you there. The high and low, that's your right price analysis. Here's the high. It equals this many days on the market. If you price your property here, it'll probably be on the market for this long. If you price your property here, it may be on the market this long. That's if nobody else does anything. That's if none of the realtors that are out there, like for example, if I was talking about McAllen, I would actually say that's if none of the almost 2,000 agents that belong to the Greater McAllen Association did anything. And every day they're listing properties. Every day they are listing properties like yours. Every day they're bringing buyers in for properties like yours. However, based on those stats, it's going to take this many days to get your home sold if it's priced here, this many days if it's sold here. Where do you want to be? And they should decide that price, not us. You always want to give them a price range, which this does, and it helps them see what they're looking at. Now, I'll tell you, everything I just gave you, I use. It's absolutely, it works. It's really good in most cases. Gets the conversation going. If there's any discussion on why it should work or shouldn't work, it'll get a conversation going with the seller. However, there's been times where the seller said, well, I don't care what your system shows. This is what I want. So now what do we do? It's not. Go ahead.
Decide if you want to take the listing. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I always tell the agents, Mac, that, all we can do is recommend, but this is the opportune time to see how the rest of your listing is going to go. If you take it and they're not in the habit of following your advice, then you're going to struggle. And so yesterday I was talking to one of our agents, Amber, and got into a discussion about, a buyer not wanting to follow her direction. And I was like, I use this example. It doesn't always work, but I say, like, it's just like going into a court of law and telling your attorney what you want them to tell the judge. So it's a dance, right, between you and the client, but always you need to be the decision maker. Well, you don't need to be the decision maker. You need to be the one that they're taking the advice from. And so it's always not always, in many cases, it's a battle, right? I think the battles are won right now, right before you even do anything.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I've, maybe it's an extreme in some cases, but I've even said that working on the buyer side. If a buyer calls and wants to see a property and you show up and you show them the information about brokerage services and you cover it with them, you ask them to initial it and they go, no, I'm not going to initial that. There's a problem right there. Right, it's an indication of them. I mean, obviously, I'm going to go over with them again, but if they absolutely refuse, they're not going to listen to you. And Nina's absolutely correct with that. You have to make some decisions sometimes on what's best for you in the long run, because no matter what we do, whether it's good or bad, we're going to get blamed for it, right? And it could be their decision on this price. It could absolutely be their decision. And in fact, one of the techniques over the years was I would use the listing agreement. I would have them write in the amount on the listing agreement, so psychologically they're taking ownership of it. But it doesn't mean anything. If it doesn't work, they're going to blame you. Because as an agent that chased expireds, Mr. Marcello, why do you think your property didn't sell? Oh, because the other agent told us to list it at that and it's not the right price. All the time. Or the other agent listed it, but they didn't do anything. All the time. And so just be careful with what you're getting into so that you know what works and what doesn't with that. The trying to grab some quick.
I'm putting the link to that Jordan Cohen book, Mac. I don't know if you've heard it yet, but I listened on Audible, The Agent's Edge, all about the listing. It's really good.
Appreciate that. Thanks. Appreciate that. All right. Any other questions on the absorption rate? That aspect of it. I'm going to touch base on another part of it here just real quick. Do this real quick. I threw this in the chat, or a copy of this kind of in the chat for you. So you guys have that if you want it. And for those of you that's not familiar, you mentioned that book is in Audible, but you could probably get it. You could probably also get it from NAR's website, NAR.realtor. Go to education and do the books there. In fact, I have 5 checked out right now that I'm listening. Which are they're interesting. In general, they have a wide variety of them. 2 of them tie in with what's happening in the market today. These are the 3 questions. Prior to getting into the situation with the seller, we need to know what's going on. We need to know what's happening with them, and we need to ask 3 questions all the time. Why are you selling? How soon do you need to sell by? And oh, by the way, what do you think your property's worth in today's market? Been using that since 2001, 2002 timeframe, and it is awesome because it helps you get there. I will tell you, for those of you that haven't done this, I think Amber was in here just a minute ago. Just as an example, yes. A lot of times when I've asked that, oh, by the way, what do you think your property's worth? They'll say, well, aren't you going to tell us that? I am. I absolutely am. But I need to find out what you think it's worth and what you're expecting. Have some kind of a comeback for it. Expect that, right? Plan for the objections and get what they have. And in my case, most of the time they say, well, we bought it for this. We did this, this, and this. So this is what we think we should be able to get out of it. And they've given you some basics. We bought it for this, and we did this, this, and this. Here's what we think we should get. Besides that, is there any other reason why you think you should get that amount of money? Besides that, is there anything else? Is a sales technique that works really good when you start trying to nail things down. Besides that, is there any other reason why you think you should get that amount of money for your property? And that's where you'll dig for the other aspect of it. They may say, well, my neighbor sold their house for this, or a person down the road sold theirs for this, or somebody I knew said this, or I have a cousin in Butte, Montana who said real estate's up and we should be able to do, you get all kinds of stuff. Just anticipate that so that you can work with it. But if you don't ask on that first conversation, as you get knee deep in this, you've already got time invested and they'll throw a curveball at you, and you need to be able to deal with it. So just real quick on this, and again, I threw the handouts in the chat so you guys have this if you want it. But when we're taking a look at what's happening within the pricing, we want to make sure that we have everything together so that we can work with it the way we need to. We want to be able to explain to them why that price needs to be there. It's not us trying to put it there. As a listing agent, primarily as a listing agent, I've been told, well, the reason you want to list it low like that so you can get paid faster. I get paid more if we get more money for it, Mr. Marcelo. I would love to have a higher price, but I thought our goal was to get your property sold, isn't it? Right, so just learn how to work with that, and there's scripts out there that you can use. You can go to MikeFerry.com. They're free. MikeFerry.com, not promoting it, but you go to MikeFerry.com, create a small account, and download all of his scripts. Or if you want, just let me know. I'll send them to you. Or even Ricky Cruth has some pretty good scripts that are on there as well. Mike Ferry's is more geared toward hard time prospecting, but price is area specific. Area specific. It doesn't matter what somebody did in Butte, Montana. It's not only Corpus Christi, it's not only McAllen or Mission or Harlingen. It's that subdivision. It's that general area. It's very, very local, right? It's area specific. We want to make sure they understand that as well, because we run across that all the time as well. Questions to ask before, we've talked about that one already. We have that in there. And then we start getting into the absorption rate. So you have to do a CMA. But on the CMA is what's going to help you come up with these numbers. And years ago, before we had the systems we have, I would write a lot of this on the back sheet of the CMA that we had, as well as the triangle that you'll hear me mention from time to time. But truths about agent pricing strategies. A lot of agents will take a listing over the recommended list price. They'll do that. And in fact, there's an instructor out of Houston that used to teach people, it doesn't matter what price it is, just take the listing. Your sign's in the yard, you're going to get phone calls. And it's just my opinion. But in our area, we work in a small area. And if you list the property over price, people are going to think you're crazy, right? And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're as close. The other part of it is, in today's market, that property has to appraise. And if we would take what we've taught, take what we work on all the time for pricing, we should not have a problem with appraisal. I say should not, because nothing in this business is 100%, right? As soon as you do, you'll spend hours on a CMA, you'll list it at that price, and the appraisal will come in $20,000 less. Then you'll be mad at me, but that's okay. Those things happen. Quick description on the absorption rate. This is in that handout as well. And when you take a look at these, remember it could be 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year. It could be whatever that market is saying needs to happen. That's what we want to use when we do the absorption rate, right? And remember, when you're doing a CMA, location is number one. Some of the test stuff we do on GRI says square footage is the most important, and it is important, but location is key. Just like we just talked about, everything's area specific, right? So location, date of sale, and then size. Location, you want it as close as possible, and there's some parameters that go with that, but as close as possible is what you want to focus on. Date of sale, 90 days. You can go out 2 years, but 90 days would be great. But then you also have to look at the size, the square footage. And the square footage, you want 15 to 25% plus or minus. 15 being ideal, right? A little tight to get there sometimes, which is why we give the fluctuation of 15 to 25. That's what appraisers use in general. So those three, and you're toggling back and forth to find the best 3 comps in that area to work with it. Absorption rate, steps. This is all lined out for you. Again, should be in that handout for you as well. And then the sheet that I threw on the screen is there. You work from that. And again, I got that from the CRS class. That's where I picked those up at. Those are slides I threw in there. All 3 of those are. So assuming that there's no other homes come on the market, that's a little bit I was giving you at the end there. When we're talking about the absorption rate, this is what we convey to the sellers, right? And understanding what a balanced market is, a seller's market, a buyer's market. This uses 6 months. So if we have a 6-month supply, we have a balanced market. If we have less than 6 months, we have a seller's market. If we have more, we have a buyer's market. Just for the purpose of this class, is it possible on the north side of Corpus Christi, we could have a seller's market, and on the south side, we could have a buyer's market? Is that possible? Have 2 different markets in the same area?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thanks, appreciate it. It is absolutely possible. And when you get into some of the smaller areas, let's say take Harlingen, for example, it's fairly small. You still have the same thing. You could have an area that's really hot and another area that's not. It's just a part of it. You have to look at those kind of things to know where you want to be. So coming on the market, the right price analysis is where we want to be. That's why we need to look at what's high, what's low, and how many days we're talking about. What do we want to do with that? And this gives you a formula for sorting that out so that you have the highest price per square foot in one area, the lowest price per square foot on the lowest. We're looking at the price in general. And this comes from somebody else. This was I think Norma had this and originally put together on this part of it. When you look at this, if you overprice a property, it's going to stay out there for a long time. And we don't want that, right? People think there's something wrong with it, which is, by the way, that's one of the reasons why MLS, days on the market, is confidential. MLS, days on the market, is confidential. That's nationwide. That's part of MLS, part of NAR still. When you take a look at that, days on the market, a lot of times agents say, well, Zillow has it or Realtor.com has it or whatever. They have days on their site most of the time. If you actually look at it, it's days on the market, days on their site, not days on the market. And the reason that's important to understand is because if I tell a buyer that the property just came on the market, it's only been on the market one day, that's detrimental to the seller because the buyer may say, I don't want to put an offer in. They're not going to be willing to negotiate if they just listed it. Right. So that's not good for the seller. If it's been on the market for a year, I said, well, this property's been on the market for a year. They're going to be like, what's wrong with it? Right. So days on the market is really important. And when we tie in the days in the market and being confidential, also like to tie in the fact that we know not only has it only been on the market one day, but it was listed a year with another agent. We know that. Realtor.com, Zillow, and all those other sites, they're not going to have that information. So we have that. We're able to provide that for the buyer. But please keep in mind, if a buyer asks, how many days has it been on the market? You can, I always ask, I usually laugh. I'll have to go, how many days has it been on the market? Well, why is that important? To try to figure out where they're at and try to shift that question into an area where I don't actually answer. If I get pounded on with it where they want the answer, how many days has it been on the market, I'll tell them it's about this amount. And that's a ballpark figure because I haven't looked at the stats on it. That's what I usually give them. All right. And on here, when we talk about, again, the dialogue, do you know how long it takes? How long it will take to go from contract to close? This is for the seller. How long is it going to take to make this all happen, right? If your house doesn't sell in that time frame, what's your plan B? And today,
Mac, I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
I have an investor that's always asking how many days on the market it is.
Yes.
And I've asked him before in the past, why is it important to him that he has that specific number on that property? And he says, because he wants to be able to base his offer on that.
Okay. All right. So that buyer investor is a client of yours, yes?
Correct.
Okay. In that case, you can tell him everything you know.
Okay. Yeah, because he's done, we've done 4 deals together.
So,
And so I was just curious. Yeah, I was curious and I asked him why, and that's what he stated. And so I always give it to him, but I just heard that your
right.
reasoning behind it. So I was just wondering.
Yeah, and thanks for allowing me to clear that up, because I'm talking about if in general, if a buyer asks, if they call in and ask, because that's one of the questions they ask up front. How long has it been available? How long has it been on the market? But if that person's your client, you can tell them everything. Remember, we owe them their fiduciary duties, right? So we have to provide them everything we know about that property in general. So in that case, that's why I mentioned the history on it as well. Maybe it's been on the market for a year with another agent, but right now it's showing 1 day. Right, new to the market, because we have an MLS. So as an investor, for example, you probably have an MLS search set up for them, so they get those properties immediately as soon as they come in on MLS. So if it expired a week ago and somebody else has picked it up now, they get that email saying, hey, it's new on the market, but we have the history on it. So when they call us on it, we can talk to them about that. Yeah, it's new on the market, but it's also been on for over a year with somebody else. So in that case, yes, a lowball offer I used to use that with investors all the time. Global offer might be appropriate for it. I see in the chat some of you wanted a copy of the scripts, so I'll get those for you. Let me shift this. I want to do one other thing. I'm going to stop the share on this side. Minimize the screen, move that over here, and get rid of this. All right. Here, because of who we have on here, I'm going to use Matrix just real quick. Some of you seen this before. Everybody can see Matrix, yes. So if you go in, if just as a reminder, and for those of you that's new at this, if you do a residential search, for example, I'm just going to do a real quick one for you. If I do a residential search, I want active and sold. And I'm just going to use 6 months. You plug in your city or subdivision, just as an example. If I was doing a full-blown CMA, you'd already have this, right? What I'm getting ready to show you. You'd already have that subdivision. All right. So I have active and sold, and this is just a real quick one, right? Is all I'm trying to do with this. I'm going to click on results. If I'd done my CMA, I'd have all the other stuff in here, and I don't have on this one. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what to look for. I want to make sure everybody sees this one thing on here. And this is on Matrix. You want to select all. I want to select all and come down here to the bottom where it has print and go to print. And then right here at the bottom is the 1004 market conditions summary or the 1004 market conditions detail. The 1004 is what appraisers use, for their appraisal for FHA. So when I click on this one, that opens up. So this was the summary. That open up for everybody? You see that? Okay. So the reason I wanted you to see it is here's our housing supply, our absorption rate right here. So over the last 3 months, we went to 2.5, 4 to 6, we were at 1.7, which means the market's slowing down in that area, right? So that's our absorption rate. Right here is total sales. 3. That's the actual absorption. Oh, I'm sorry. I had the housing supply. There you go. But these are the absorb. This is the absorb. Yeah, there. Speak English. Absorption rate. Right there. And the other thing that's on here that's really beneficial is the list price to sales price ratio, that percentage. And when you're looking at the list price to sales price ratio, you want this is pretty important. So now, right now, agents are listing properties over what they should be listed at, and they're selling 94% less. So this to me, I've used stats like this in a minute against a listing agent. If we're competing, in a heartbeat. If I'm taking an expired listing, the property expired. Why do you think it expired and didn't sell? Because the agent didn't do their job. I can show them that the market has shifted, and homes at your price range are selling for 94% less than what they were listed at. And we want to make sure that we have the right price, which means we're going to lower the price. And almost every expired listing I took, we lowered the price right at the beginning, which of course helped get it sold. But this is in there, and use this to your advantage. If you're doing a CMA, this should be a part of that CMA, and it tells you what type of property you used, the search date for the properties. It gives you everything you have on it, right? And this search date would be for the status for the closing, etc. When you're setting it up on your initial screen. And on here, when we do the detailed, if I was talking to somebody and they said, I'm thinking about selling my house in 6 months, for example, I might pull this and let them take a look at it. Here's properties that have sold. If they're my client and I'm working with them, there's properties that have sold, and here's the absorption rate and all that stuff down at the bottom, so they actually see what's going on, just to give them an idea. But generally speaking, this is the one I would use. That same thing is available in RPR, if you run the valuation workbook, it's in RPR, it's one of the last few pages, and it's on there in RPR as well. Anybody have any questions on that?
Mac, I have a question about RPR. It's a little off subject, but why do I notice that RPR is off on the property value versus the MLS?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
So the listing, so when I go check to see, I go through MLS and I go through, I think it's called Realist. It'll tell me what the value of the property's worth, an estimated value. And then I go to RPR and, right at the top, it'll show what its estimate value is on the property as well.
Right.
And it's always off.
Right.
And so I was just wondering what the purpose, why is it off? Is it because RPR pulls
Yeah.
broader?
They are pulling from different platforms. RPR pulls from over 300 different platforms, and that's that AVM on a property. Like this one right here has an AVM of 270, right? An AVM is an automated value model. So it's a computerized guess. What we used to call in the Marine Corps a WAG, wild ass guess. That's what that AVM is. In fact, that's joking around years ago. That used to be our Zestimate. An RVM is that 300 platforms plus MLS. So the realist works just like this. It gives you an automated value. Gives you an automated value based on their systems, right? And
Correct.
so there's going to be some differences because of the systems they use. I would imagine, since the realist is combined with CoreLogic, it's probably a little more accurate than this AVM. And now that you ask about it, I would want to, I will probably go in and check, because I like to see how far off it is on an RVM, because RVM is tied to MLS and CoreLogic is MLS. So are they pulling that information on the realist from that? Because they are together. Even though they're considered separate, they are together. CoreLogic and the realist work together. So it may be tied to, so it may be closer to this one than this one based on the designation of what it is. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
But it is
Because
based,
when I asked MLS about the AVM, they pull the data from what have sold in the past in that area. And so they just go by, it's computerized, right? So it just goes by whatever was sold or on the market, pulled off the market. It goes by all of it.
right.
So I was just wondering, I was just wondering about RPR, what the difference was.
Yes, ma'am. And right here, if I click on view details, it'll show you why how they come up with that 270. Right here on view details. And same thing if it's an RVM, it'll have view details. It'll show you the comps they use to come up with that as well. Okay. All right,
Awesome. Thank you.
I had two of the last things I want to share with you right quick before we go, if I could, please. Right here underneath, everybody see Max Center? Everybody see that? Everybody good there? Max Center? You guys seeing Remax? Yes? Okay, good. Thanks.
Yes.
All right, so underneath, update your profile. And for those of you that's on here, you can share this with other agents. That'd be absolutely fantastic. In a recent training session with Remax, I realized that I had messed up because I thought this didn't matter anymore, and it does matter. What we need to do is we need to make sure that our professional details right here are set up, because you have office areas and additional service areas. Some of you, maybe not the ones in here, but some agents for this additional service areas have absolutely nothing. Some of you have the same thing, and that doesn't work either. It doesn't help. So these are leads coming from Remax, like agent to agent type leads. For example, we want to make sure that if somebody does a search for an agent, if another Remax agent does a search for you, or maybe on remax.com, for example, they do a search for you, you want to be able to come up. So you need additional areas, and you can put whatever you want. You're only allowed to have 5 of them. So once again, if McAllen is up here, office service areas, I don't want to put McAllen down here because I'm talking about trying to get leads from different areas. So this gives us an opportunity to cover a wide range of areas. And again, there's several agents that do not have anything down here. And there's some that have, there's one I had opened up where they have mission. You don't need that. It's not going to help you get more leads, right?
Max, scroll up a second, highlight how you got there. What is it, office profile or
Right. So when you
oh,
log
professional details?
professional details is what you want to click on.
Mac, I'm glad you brought that up because I thought it meant the additional. I thought it meant like the surrounding areas. So there I have like Portland, Aransas Pass. I have all our surrounding areas. So
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah. And so for example, I have because I'm with the mission
Well,
office,
it could be that, Michelle. It just depends on what you have on top.
right? So the service areas on the top are for the office. So like I'm with the mission office, and this is what the mission office has set up. On the bottom are areas that I feel I could service. So I have South Padre Island on here. I'm not going to service South Padre Island, but if an agent contacts me, says they have somebody at South Padre that wants to sell a property or buy a property or whatever, I can refer them to an agent down there. So we don't lose that. I give you that one as an example, but this could be your areas. And not every little area is in there. Remax is a large company, right? There's an agent here in Harlingen that wants the country club, the country club put in here, and it's not in here. So we can send that up to Remax and let them know. Maybe we can add that in. But even though we consider it a specific area, even though it even has its own city, if you will, they have their own police department, their own city hall type thing. It's not listed in here because it's so small.
And the agents can't edit the non-editables. So those are office level. So they just need to add their add-ons. So for
Exactly.
example, in Corpus Christi, Portland, Port Aransas, Aransas Pass, and Kingsville. So if you wanted add-on areas, Michelle, or any of the Corpus people, you could put Alice, Falfurrias, Fremont, wherever else that's outside of what we service as the norm.
You said we could post that where? Or add
In
it
other
where?
words, your add-ons are on the bottom because the office service areas you see on the right where the little lock is, it says non-editable. Does that mean, Mac, we've set those or the agent has set them?
Oh, the office set them.
Okay. So the agent can narrow down based on the additional service. I'm not trying to confuse the issue.
Okay.
Can I add like the Houston area?
It should populate up there. It'll allow you down here on the additional service areas. It'll allow you to add just about anything you can come up with. So you can even change state. And that's why I mentioned the referral aspect of it. The only problem is if this is coming in from another agent, another Remax agent in California, for example, looking for an agent in that Houston area, they contact you, say, hey, I have a family member in Houston that wants to sell a property. You refer to somebody else up there, you're probably not going to get a referral fee because they're already referring. So that may defeat the purpose. I do it because of what I do. That's the reason I have that set up on there. Does that make sense, Karen?
No, because I would work it.
Oh, you'd work. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're
I
right.
got you there.
Sorry. Yes, you got me. Absolutely. I was thinking Corpus Christi. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, you absolutely do that. Yeah. All right. That was one thing. And then the last thing I wanted to share with you, and I'm going to give you a copy of this if I can. Let's see if I can copy this. See that real quick for you. Real quick for you. Too many moving parts today. Don't mind me if I'm talking to myself. It's drives my wife nuts, but that's the only way I can make this work. Here we go. Just copy this link for you so you have this PDF. Awesome. So let me share this with you. I just threw this in the chat. This is daily task, and this comes. This is not a Remax thing or any of this. In '97, when I started, this came out of Carla Cross's book, Up and Running, Making Money Your First Month in Real Estate, which the other day I pulled that book up. It's still available on Amazon, but I think it's $40 some. But it's really good. It's about business planning, is what it is about, business planning. And I used that when I first started. These are the daily tasks, what you should be doing on a daily basis as a real estate agent, building your business. So Jen, Amber, you guys, this is just one aspect of this. And what I try to do and what I do is I throw out different things, and hopefully something you find, something that's there is something you can use. This is what I used initially. And in fact, I talk about this from time to time in classes, because this 5 other brokers listings, preview 5 other brokers listings is extremely beneficial. When you go to preview 5 other brokers listings, you want to, other brokers, not ours, other brokers listings, you want them to be owner occupied or tenant occupied. And you want to leave a business card turned upside down with "Thank you for allowing me to preview the property." When you schedule those, sometimes agents will say, "Why do you want to preview it?" If you're a new agent, it's because I'm trying to learn the market, learn more about what's on the market. I'd like to know what this property looks like, right? Not a big deal. There's nothing wrong with that. Occasionally, agent will say, "Well, they don't want anybody just walking through unless they have a buyer." Oh, okay, well, I may have a buyer. I need to preview the property. But anyway, and leaving the business card is, in most areas, is a normal practice to let the seller know that you've been there. Leaving it upside down with a thank you note, "Thank you for allowing me to preview it," will generate listings for you, because when it doesn't sell, they will call you to see what you can do, because their agent never told them thank you for anything. In fact, Doris Leopard was one of the agents I worked with at Century 21. She tried this, and they called her and said, "Nobody, not even our listing agent, ever told us thank you for anything. We stage it, we have all lights on, we have everything, all the windows open. You know, we stage our home for showings, and you're the only person that ever said thank you." And when that listing expired, she got the listing. And she was just, and I know that because she came to me and she goes, "This thing works. I've done it myself. I know it works. These are just a way to try to generate some business." Right? Prospecting is the key. Anybody have any questions there? Nope. All right. Well, let's go fire up the barbecue then. Ready to go. It's Labor
Hey,
Day.
Mac,
Yes, ma'am.
I used to get a subdivision and look and see how long it's been on the market. If it's been on the market 5 months, I would go preview it and leave a business card. And I got a couple of deals because the seller's like, "You were the last one in here and my property just expired."
Awesome. So you said
Wow, that's a good idea.
you'd look at the subdivision or the listing.
I would go, no, I'll focus on one subdivision
Okay.
and see how long they've been on the market.
Love it.
Back then, there were more on the market than what there is now. Now you could jump from subdivision to subdivision.
Sure. Yep. Absolutely.